Welcome to another session of Chemistry by Cloud Tutors, a program to help grade 10 students to prepare for board exams. Today we'll be seeing the third chapter, dealing with metals and non-metals. Chapter 3. But very specifically, we'll be discussing at the outset the physical properties of metals and non-metals and some of the chemical properties of metals and non-metals will be getting covered in today's session. Now, let's come to the subject weightage. You know that the entire chemistry paper is going to be getting covered for 25 marks under the aspect of materials in daily life. So, the total marks of the entire science paper is going to be for 80 marks. But you're going to write 25 marks chemistry. And this third chapter, metals and non-metals, is very important chapter, and definitely you will be getting nearly 4 to 5 marks questions that will be asked from this chapter, metals and non-metals. Now, with respect to the Bloom's taxonomy, you can be asked remembering questions for 20%, understanding aspects that will be getting covered for 40%, the applying that will be getting covered for 20%, and the remaining 20% is definitely going to test your drawing skill as well as higher order thinking skills. So put together, the entire science paper is going to be attempted for 80 marks, out of which you are going to learn the different aspects of chemistry. And to be very specific, in today's session, we will be covering up this chapter, which is dealing with metals and non-metals. So, how could these questions be asked? They can be asked in different format. It could be well covered as multiple choice question, or as just writing the answer in one word, or you can be asked a 2-mark question, or a 3-mark question coming as long answer, or a 4-mark question, or it could be a 5-mark question. But the most important aspect that you have to understand is this chapter will cover up nearly 4 to 5 total marks of your science paper. Now, coming to the flow chart of this metals and non-metals chapter, we will be getting covered with physical properties of metals and non-metals, later chemical properties of metals and non-metals under part 1. Because there are a lot of chemical properties that will be getting duly covered even in the next session as part 2. Now, there are lot of elements that is occurring. How to group all these elements was a very big task for understanding as well as applying those particular properties of metals and non-metals in various fields. So, we have actually framed a table to understand. We here is being referred to all the chemists who have taken utmost measure to make the understanding of all the elements that is occurring in nature, the study in a very, very easier manner. Let us see a lot of examples, one after the other. The elements which are being utilized by all of us in our daily life. This is the element which is given the representation as Au, gold, having very lustrous property. It is shining in nature. It is very much utilized in making up of all the gold ornaments used in jewelry. Now, let's see the next element which is coming up. This is silver, given by the representation Ag, silver, Ag. It is again a metal which is very much having extensive application in the jewelry industry. Now, the next, what you are able to see here is one of the most expensive element, platinum, which is given by the representation Pt. It is again an element which is having a very wide application in the jewelry industry. Now, this is copper, given by the symbol Cu. It is very extensively utilized for making the electrical connections. As we know that copper is one of the metal which is used in electrical wires because it is a good conductor of heat as well as electricity. So we will be discussing why there were so many elements occurring. How was it easy or a difficult task to understand all these properties of elements one after the other? So we have to understand the properties of all these elements by only making a group study, which is done in a periodic manner, and that we will be learning as what is known as periodic table. But we have seen so far gold, then silver, platinum, copper. But let us see some more elements which we are utilizing. This is iron, nail, represented by Fe. Chromium, which is given by the symbol Cr. It is very much utilized in the automobile industry. Aluminium, which is represented by Al. It is said to be a very good conductor of electricity as well as heat. If you take up for your daily usage of many gadgets, we make utilization of zinc, Zn. So all these are various elements that have definitely found a significant usage for making our life very comfortable. Now, this is what is known as the periodic table. You have the elements. 118 elements are present in the periodic table. Let me write the number. 118 elements are present in what is known as the periodic table. Now, among the elements which are present in the periodic table, there are these elements which you can see in blue shaded region. They are all metallic in character. You have all these elements which are arranged diagonally. They are called as semi-metals. Otherwise, they are called as metalloids. Whereas you do have on the extreme end of the periodic table, which is all shaded as green region, they are all getting occupied with elements which are non-metals. So basic qualification for understanding chemistry is understanding the periodicity of all the elements in the periodic table. So generally, this periodicity in properties of elements can be studied under two categories. One is known as the physical property, and the other category is what is known as the chemical property. So all these 118 elements were very well grouped in this kind of a table, which is known as periodic table. So this table makes the study of chemistry very, very easier. So now let us see, based on physical properties of elements which are mainly metallic in nature, what could be the salient features. So let us step into the physical properties of metals. The very first property of metal is, generally metals have shining, lustrous appearance. So I was just mentioning a few minutes earlier that the easiest way to start grouping the substances is by comparing their physical properties. So let's see the first physical property. Metals which are very widely used in the jewelry industry are used only because metals are having metallic luster. Luster means shining appearance. You can see here gold plated watches, medals, chains. You can see here bangles, necklace. All these are having shining appearance. Now, metals are hard solids. That is why you happen to hit any metallic part with an hammer, they are not going to be broken very easily because all metals are generally hard. And of course, you will get some ringing sound when any metallic part is being hit with an hammer. That is again another physical property called as sonorous property. But generally metals are very hard. As a result of which you find many parts in automobile industry getting involved with various metals. Now, exceptional case is mercury. It is an example of a liquid metal which is used in thermometer to record the temperature change. So mercury is an exception to the particular statement which states that metals are generally hard solids. Here you find mercury is a liquid. It is not existing in the solid state. Now, all metals are not hard. Again, there are some exceptional cases. There is a metal which is given by the symbol Na, sodium. It can be very easily cut with a knife because it is very, very soft in nature. And these metal, sodium and potassium, which is given by the representation K, you find these metals to be highly reactive metals. So generally, all these metals are not kept exposed to the atmospheric air. They will all catch fire. So it is well stored in a liquid which is kerosene. So sodium and potassium metals are all very soft metals, unlike iron, chromium, aluminium, which are all very hard. Now, generally, metals have high melting and boiling points. When steel is being manufactured, the blast furnace is always at a very high temperature. The maintenance aspect, if you see in any blast furnace, it is going to generate huge amount of heat energy. So, utmost care has to be carried out for the proper maintenance of every blast furnace where steel is being manufactured. So you can see the molten iron which is coming out is having a very high melting point of 1538 degrees centigrade. So generally metals have very high melting and boiling points. If you take up the mercury, it is having very high boiling point, and boiling point of mercury is 356.7 degrees centigrade. So general physical property that you have to remember is metals have very high melting and boiling points. If you take up the metals which are aluminium, you can see here, this is aluminium, copper, gold, zinc, all these property of the metals whereby you are able to make them into thin sheets is known as malleability. So the general physical property is metals are malleable. That means you can draw them into thin sheets. Next, you must have seen copper is very extensively used in the electrical connections. The fencing wire, the musical instruments, they all involve metals, and that property of a metal whereby you are able to draw them into very, very thin wire is known as ductility. So the general physical property is metals are ductile. If you take a metallic rod and try to keep a burning candle and start heating this metallic rod, after some time you can see the heat energy will start passing from one end of the metallic rod to the extreme other end. After few minutes, this person will not be able to hold this metallic rod any longer. It is just because metals are good conductors of heat. Heat is getting transferred from one end to the other end. Now let us see what happens if a person happens to touch this particular pan where thermal energy is coming in contact. You can see his hand is getting burnt. So metals are generally good conductors of heat. Now, coming to the next physical property. The next physical property is metals are generally good conductors of electricity. But before that, I would like to show you here a particular video where you can see a metallic pin has been embedded in that metallic rod with the help of wax, and it is being heated with the help of a spirit lamp. Now, as soon as the spirit lamp is lighted and the heat energy is transferred from one end to the other end, you can see the wax will melt and the pin will start falling down. So this experiment generally proves that metals are good conductors of heat. Now coming to the aspect of metals are good conductors of electricity. You have this kind of an electrical circuit setup. You can take a copper wire. This is actually a copper sheet has been taken. You can either take any metallic wire or you can take a metallic sheet and then try to clamp the copper sheet with the help of crocodile clips and connect them to what is called as this kind of an electrical circuit setup by means of wires. And then you should have an electrical bulb and a battery connected. You can see this bulb will start glowing just because this metal plate, which is made up of copper, is able to conduct electricity. So now let's watch now. The moment you see here the switch being switched on, you can see the bulb will start glowing. That means this particular metallic plate is a good conductor of electricity. Now coming to one more significant usage of school bell or the church bell or the bell which is there in temple. It is all able to give you a metallic ringing sound. It is only because metals are having this property which is known as sonorous property. What is it known as? It is known as sonorous property. You will always get a metallic ringing sound when they are being banged. Now coming to physical properties of non-metals. We have seen a lot of physical properties of metals. Metals are lustrous, metals are malleable, metals are ductile, metals have very high melting and boiling points, metals are good conductors of heat, metals are good conductors of electricity, metals are sonorous. That means what could be the physical properties of non-metals? Now, some of the examples of non-metals you can see here. This is bromine, a reddish brown liquid. This is carbon. This is sulfur. This is the chlorine, Cl representation, whereas S is the representation for sulfur, C is the representation for coal, whereas you have Br, the representation for bromine. Now, what could be the physical properties of all these non-metals? They are, the first point is, non-metals are having dull appearance. They are not shiny. They are non-lustrous. They are usually liquids or gases. They are characterized by having low melting and boiling points. They cannot be made into thin sheets They are not malleable. They are not ductile. That means they cannot be drawn into thin wires. They are poor conductors of heat and electricity, and they do not produce any metallic ringing sound. So all these are the physical properties of non-metals. Now, some of the non-metal, if you take up, one of the non-metal especially is having shining luster. It is iodine. Now, imagine I am having a spoon which is made up of gallium and I want to stir sugar solution. Just after few seconds, you can see the spoon will entirely disappear. That means gallium is one of the element which has very, very low melting point. You take up cesium. It is another element which has low melting point. Now, mercury is given by the symbolic representation Hg. It is again an exceptional property of it existing in the liquid state. You have iodine given by I, symbolic representation. Lustrous non-metal. You have the allotropic form of carbon, which is nothing but diamond. And you have graphite. They are all the allotropic forms of carbon, and they seem to be having exceptional properties. Now, coming to the physical properties, in general we have seen of all the metals, and then we have seen that metals are generally hard. But if I take the example of the alkali metals like lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, francium, all of these are called as alkali metals, and they can be cut easily with a knife just because they have the physical property of being soft. Now, coming to the next aspect of chemical properties. What happens when metal is exposed to air? With oxygen, if I take a magnesium ribbon, if it is burnt in a Bunsen burner, it gives out a dazzling light with a white powder formed, which is magnesium oxide. If I take copper turnings and if I try to just bring the copper turnings into a burning spirit lamp, immediately the copper turns black in color. The substance which is brown initially, when it is made to react with oxygen, it gets converted into black, resulting in the formation of a compound called copper oxide. Now, if I take aluminium metal and make it react with oxygen, it results in the formation of alumina, which is given by Al2O3. Now, here I am just going to sprinkle iron filings. You have to remember, iron is very hard substance and it will not burn in oxygen. But iron filings, if it is being sprinkled over the spirit lamp, again you can see brilliant light coming out. It's because iron reacts with oxygen to form iron oxide. So all these are the chemical properties of metals when it is coming in contact with oxygen, resulting in the formation of the respective metallic oxides. Now, sodium is one of the most reactive element, the metallic element. When it is just exposed to air, it catches fire. So generally all these alkali metals which are reactive, especially if you take up sodium, potassium, they are all stored in kerosene. Now coming to metallic oxides which are formed just because the metal is coming in contact with oxygen. Now we will be seeing what happens when a metallic oxide is made to react with water. So let's see first the chemical property of a metal with respect to oxygen. If it is subjected, it gets converted to the formation of a metallic oxide. And finally, when this metallic oxide is being tested further for its acidity or basicity, depending upon the element, whether it is a metal or a non-metal, we can see the chemical properties now. See here, this is copper oxide which has been formed by copper reacting with oxygen. It is made to react with an acid, hydrochloric acid. Immediately the solution turns green in color. This green color is due to the formation of copper chloride. Now let's see what happens when an aluminium is dropped in a beaker. There are two beakers present here. This beaker is containing NaOH, and the other beaker, which is on the right hand side, it is containing hydrochloric acid. Now this beaker contains HCl and this beaker contains NaOH. So aluminium, when it is being dropped into NaOH and HCl, it is reacting thereby to form what is called as salt and water. Indirectly, aluminium will combine with oxygen to form alumina, and alumina reacts with the base, which is NaOH or HCl, to form subsequently salt and water. Now, such a kind of an oxide which is able to react with an acid or a base to form salt and water, they are known as amphoteric oxide. But now let us see one of the metallic oxide which is made to react with water. Now let us take a magnesium ribbon and burn. Magnesium ribbon, when it is burned, it results in the formation of white powder of magnesium oxide. And if this magnesium oxide is added with some amount of water, it gets converted into magnesium hydroxide. And magnesium hydroxide is said to be basic in nature. So you have to bring a red litmus paper, and that red litmus paper will turn blue. So this particular activity makes you understand that magnesium oxide is an example of what is known as metallic oxide. You can see the red litmus paper turning blue. This is the white ash of magnesium oxide. Water is being added drop-wise into the white powder of magnesium oxide. It gets converted to magnesium hydroxide, and a few drops of it is made to be dropped into a blue litmus paper. You can see there is no change, but in a red litmus paper it turns blue. That means it makes you understand magnesium is a metal. When it combines with oxygen, it results in the formation of magnesium oxide, and that magnesium oxide, if water is added into it, it gets converted into magnesium hydroxide. Now coming to some more examples of metals which can combine with oxygen to form their respective oxides, and those oxides, if they are dissolved in water, they are getting easily soluble. That means these water soluble bases, they are all called as alkalis. What are they called as? They are all called as alkalis. One good example is sodium hydroxide. The next one is potassium hydroxide, calcium hydroxide, and ammonium hydroxide. They are all called as alkalis, which are all water soluble. So metallic oxides will dissolve in water. Then if they are getting completely dissolved, they result in the formation of water called as water soluble bases known as alkalis. Now coming to the metals which are not reactive. They don't react when it comes in contact with air or oxygen. Such metals are known as noble metals. They are known as noble metals. Example, you take up gold, silver. All these are coins which are all belonging to what is known as noble metals. Now, metals, when it is made to react with water, sodium is a highly reactive metal. You can see when sodium is being dropped into a beaker containing water, immediately you can see violent reaction happening, resulting in liberation of hydrogen gas along with NaOH that is being formed. Calcium is another metal which will be reacting with water. But the reactivity of every metal will not be the same. Reactivity of metal with oxygen, with water, they are all going to be differing from one another. If I take the case of calcium, if it is dropped in a beaker containing water, you can see this calcium will start floating to the top, because these hydrogen bubbles which are formed will get stuck to the surface of calcium, and calcium will start floating, resulting in the formation of calcium hydroxide and hydrogen. But this reaction of calcium with water, it is not as violent as we saw sodium in water. But both are resulting in evolution of heat energy. They are all exothermic reactions. Now coming to another metal, say for example iron, it will not react with cold water or hot water, but it can undergo reaction with what is known as steam. So steam is being made to come in contact with this iron, which is the metallic sample. If this kind of an setup of a boiling test tube is placed and you make utilization of a burner to pass on the heat energy, you have to take up a glass wool which has been soaked in water. So water which is present here in the glass wool, when it comes in contact with this heat energy, it starts getting converted into the vapor form which reacts with this metal. When I take iron, Fe, and make it react with water which is in the gaseous state, then immediately the compound which is formed will be Fe3O4 plus hydrogen gas. So this kind of hydrogen gas can be very easily collected by an delivery tube kept over a trough containing water. So here you can see hydrogen is a lighter gas, so it gets collected here. So all these metals are reacting with water, but they are not reacting under the same conditions of being cold. So you have to understand there are metals which are highly reactive in cold water, but some metals are there which will react with hot water, but some metal will react with water vapor. So the reactivity of metals is varying from one metal to another metal. Now viewers, you all should be good enough to answer today's challenge question. What is it? Aluminium, which is used for making the cooking utensils. What is the property which is making aluminium to be responsible for the utilization in the kitchen as utensils? Is it due to good thermal conductivity, or is it due to good electrical conductivity, or is it due to ductility, or is it due to high melting point? You can see the person is wondering, but you have to answer this in terms of these options A, B, or C, or D to this particular link which you are able to see at the bottom. So if you have understood all the physical properties of metals, you can very well click this link and answer whether the answer is A or B or C or D. Now coming to the 1 mark question that has been asked for the private candidates of KSEEB on 2nd of April. Aluminium oxide is called amphoteric oxide. So you have to write aluminium oxide Al2O3 reacts with acid and base to form salt and water. Al2O3 plus HCl gives AlCl3 plus H2O. Then Al2O3 plus NaOH gives NaAlO2 plus H2O. So it is reacting with an acid as well as a base to form salt and water. If time permits, immediately balance the equation. So any oxide which is amphoteric oxide is said to react with acids and bases to form salt and water. This will fetch you 1 mark. Now coming to the next CBSE 2020 question which has been asked for just 1 mark. Consider the following statements about an element X which is having number of protons 13. That means it is referring to the element which is aluminium having atomic number 13. And mass number is going to be 27 for aluminium. But you have to just take into consideration 13, which is given as number of protons. It forms amphoteric oxide. So you know that it is Al2O3. Its valency is 3. Aluminium is having valency 3. It is a trivalent element. The formula of its chloride is XCl3. That means if I say aluminium chloride, it is given by the formula AlCl3. What is the correct statement? The correct answer is A, B and C. They are all correct. So that will fetch you 1 mark. Now, coming to the next 1 mark question that has been asked in CBSE 2020. Mention with reason the color changes observed when copper powder is strongly heated in presence of oxygen. So, copper, it is brown in color. When it is heated, when copper is heated in presence of oxygen, it turns black. We have seen it turns black due to the formation of cupric oxide, CuO. So you can write the equation Cu plus O2 gives CuO, and you can quickly balance. 2CuO, I can write here 2Cu plus O2 gives 2CuO. So black color of copper oxide is the product formed. So the color change observed is brown to black. So you have to just mention in specific the answer brown to black. Now coming to the next question. It has been asked in the model question paper of 2018 and 19 in the SLC board for 2 marks. Write any 4 physical properties of metals. So you can write metals are lustrous. They have shining property. Next, metals are malleable. Third property, metals are ductile. Metals are sonorous. Metals are sonorous. Well, you can even add metals are good conductors of heat. They are good conductors of electricity. They have high melting and boiling points. It's just a 2-mark question, so each question will carry half mark. So half into 4 becomes 2. Now to the next 2-mark question that has been asked in CBSE 2015. Write one example of each of a metal which is so soft that it can be cut with a knife. So the answer is sodium. You can write its representation as Na. Whereas a non-metal, which is the hardest substance, diamond, which is the allotropic form of carbon, is the hardest substance. So carbon is the non-metal which is given by the representation C. A metal and a non-metal which exist as liquid at room temperature. The metal is mercury, which is given by the symbolic representation of Hg. Whereas a non-metal is bromine, which is represented by the symbol Br. So this will fetch you 1 mark. This will fetch you 1 mark. So it's a 2-mark question that has been asked. Now coming to the next question, which has been asked in CBSE 2020. Again a 2-mark question. With the help of a labeled diagram, show the experimental setup of action of steam on a metal. So here is the testing of your drawing ability skill, which is just for 2 marks asked. So you can draw a very rough diagram depicting the chemical reaction of iron with steam. You have to just draw a boiling test tube, close it with a rubber cork, allow the hydrogen gas to be collected by having a delivery tube connected into a trough containing water. you have a stand to clamp this particular boiling test tube. And inside the boiling glass test tube, you have to take a piece of metal, iron, Fe, and then make it come in contact with a glass wool which has been completely soaked in water. So the water will get duly vaporized because of coming in contact with the thermal heat energy. Thereby, this steam will react with iron to form the respective metallic oxide along with the liberation of hydrogen. So just draw this diagram and do the labeling properly. That will fetch you 2 marks. So draw and label. That will fetch you 2 marks. Now coming to the next question. It has been asked in CBSE 2013. 2 marks. School bells are made up of metals. Why? Because metals are sonorous. They are able to give you the metallic ringing sound very easily, and school bells are definitely made up of an alloy which is containing metals, which produce metallic ringing sound. That alloy which is used in the school bell is actually called as bell metal. Bell metal. Now, electric wires are made up of copper because copper is a good conductor of electricity. It is an example of a metal. So this will fetch you 1 mark. This will fetch you 1 mark. Now, coming to the next 3-mark question that has been asked in CBSE 2020. 1 gram of copper powder was taken in a china dish and heated. That means copper is made to react with oxygen to form copper oxide. So Cu plus O2 gives 2CuO. So you have the balanced equation as 2Cu plus O2 gives 2CuO. What change takes place on heating? This substance was brown in color. It turned into black color cupric oxide. So you write brown to black, you get 1 mark. When hydrogen gas is passed over this heated substance, a visible change is seen. That means you have to know copper oxide, when it is made to react with hydrogen, it results in the formation of copper plus H2O. So again, black color substance is becoming brown. So this is a visible change. Give the chemical equations of reactions. So it is again a self-balanced equation. The name and the color of the products formed in each case. This is copper oxide. Copper oxide, or I can call it as cupric oxide, whereas this is known as copper. It is an example of a reaction which is known as redox reaction. So you can see here the black color copper oxide is made to come in contact with hydrogen gas. Immediately the reaction happens between copper oxide and hydrogen, resulting in the formation of copper and water. So you have to just mention the equation, write the name of the reactant, how it is getting converted into product. Subsequently, you are going to fetch your 3 marks. There is no need for drawing the diagram. This is just for mere explanation for you to understand. That's all. So do not waste your time. Coming to the next 3-mark question. A shining metal M, which has been asked in CBSE 2020. A shining metal M on burning gives a dazzling white flame and changes to a white powder N. Identify M as well as N. That will fetch you 1 mark. So the shining metal was magnesium, which was the metal M. Whereas Mg was made to burn in oxygen, we got magnesium oxide, and this was N. So 2Mg plus O2 gives 2MgO is the equation, which is not necessary to be written right now because it is only identify M and N. So M identification, you have to write it as magnesium and N as magnesium oxide. Magnesium oxide. Now, coming to the two more aspects of the same question B. Represent the above reaction in the form of a balanced chemical equation, which we have already discussed. 2Mg plus O2 gives 2MgO. Finally, the third C subdivision. Does M undergo oxidation or reduction in this reaction? Justify, you have to write Mg is undergoing oxidation. Oxidation, as it is involving addition of oxygen. So this will fetch you 1 mark. This will fetch you 1 mark, and identification of M and N will fetch you 1 more mark. So now let us conclude today's session. We had seen in the initial part of the session all the physical properties of metals and some exceptional properties of metals, and of course gradually non-metals physical properties were also discussed, and we came across the reactivity of metals, how it was differing with respect to the action of oxygen, with respect to the action of metals with water. So all these are to be understood because we are using many metals and non-metals in our daily life. So hope to see you all in the next session, where we will be dealing with more chemical properties of metals and non-metals. See you in the next session. Thank you.